Welcome to Elektor Engineering Insights, the show that puts your engineering challenges to the industry's experts. I'm your host, Stuart Cording. The word invention awakes a certain amount of excitement in the bodies of the technically and scientifically natured, and because inventions can require significant investment to turn them into something that is viable, many inventors turn to the patent process to protect them. In the EU, more than 180,000 patent applications are submitted each year, with Germany leading the way in Europe. But if you've ever read a patent, you're probably wondering if you need to learn a new way of writing and drawing in order to submit one. To answer these questions and many more, my panel of experts this month includes Rainer Osterwalder from the European Patent Office and Carla Gomez and Nuno Correa from Solaris Float. Welcome to the show, everybody. I'm going to start with Rainer. Hi there, Rainer. How are you doing?
Hi, Stuart. Good to see you. Hello, everyone.
So could you briefly give us some background on your role at the European Patent Office?
Thank you. Yes, I've been working in communication for quite a few years at the EPO. I have a background as a trained journalist, and I joined in the EPO as an editor in the press department, have then later moved on to be the director for media relations, and I'm now in the position of an advisor to the head of corporate communications at the EPO on all matters regarding external and internal communication.
Thank you very much. It's great. I'm really looking forward to finding out more about what the EPO does, and as you guide us through the process. I'm just going to go over to our other participants, Nuno and Carla from Solaris Floats. Hi there, Carla.
Hi.
Nice to see you. Thank you for joining us. Tell us a little bit more about what you do for Solaris Float.
So my work is project manager, and I see or organize the tasks for produce the new products. So I try to develop the platforms for floating, PV floating.
Super. And Nuno as well. Of course, Solaris Float, we've invited along because you've actually applied for a couple of patents, and you're going to explain that today. What's your role at Solaris Float, Nuno?
So that's something we'll get into in the show. And hello, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. It's wonderful to be here. Both Carla and I actually work in another place that actually provided research development services for Solaris Floats. But within the project, Carla was the project manager. As she was explaining, I coordinated the development within the institution that we work for also. The idea was that we developed these floating photovoltaic systems that could be then implemented industrially by Solaris.
Fantastic. Thank you for that brief introduction. I'm just going to then tell our audience a little bit more about some of the stuff we're talking to, and we'll catch up with you later on in the show. Now, ever since I started my career, I've been in awe of those who have a patent to their name. The idea that someone invented something new is just incredible. But I've never been granted a patent, so I have plenty of questions to ask about the patent application process. However, this is a show for you engineers out there struggling with such challenges. So regardless of where you are watching, post your questions and comments during the show using the chat function on YouTube and LinkedIn, or via Twitter using the hashtag ElektorEI. And we'll do our best to get answers directly during the show, or even guide you to resources that might help afterwards. Super. So I'm going to go back then to Rainer. Thank you for joining us today, Rainer. I'd like to start by asking a little bit more about the European Patent Office. So what is the European Patent Office? What does it do, and where is it located?
Stuart, thanks a lot for that question, because many people, when they hear the word European, they immediately think of EU. But this is not the case in the case of the EPO. The European Patent Office is an intergovernmental institution that was set up more or less exactly 50 years ago on the basis of a contract that was signed here in Munich, the so-called European Patent Convention. And that convention has been signed by now no less than 38 countries. So we are an organization which is borne by 38 member states, soon to be 39, and we're rather big also as an office. We have more than 6,000 people working in Munich, where the headquarters are, and in The Hague, where we have a very large office, plus in Berlin, in Vienna, and with a small antenna also in Brussels, where we ensure relations with the EU institutions.
Okay.
And we have actually one major task, and that's examining European patent applications to see that a European patent can be granted. And the second task that deserves to be named here is making sure that all the information contained in patent is disseminated to the public at worldwide level.
That's clear and obvious, because when somebody comes on the website, for example, and looks for a patent, and sort of preparing for today, I was doing that, the accessibility of the patents is incredible. They come up nice and quickly, they're easily accessible, and obviously that's an essential part of the patent process, and being an inventor, and also investigating what's been invented. But I think before we get too deep into it, or maybe we should take a step back and actually get an introduction from you as to what is a patent, who can apply for one, and what's their function within a business or a legal framework.
Exactly, that's a very good point to start, because first of all, you need to understand that patent is one of many rights that belong to intellectual property rights. First of all, a patent is a legal title, you could say. Anyone who owns a patent has the possibility to use it in very many ways. For instance, he can actually exclude others, third parties, competitors, etc., from using his patent-protected invention without his consent. In other words, he can ask for licenses if somebody else wants to use his invention. A patent is also a legal, or rather technical, document containing a lot of valuable technical teaching. A patent legally protects a technical teaching which offers a technical solution to a technical problem. This is its main function. So a patent in that sense, of course, is a document of technological progress. So if you monitor patents in your area of activity, you get a pretty good idea what the development trend in your area is, who the actors are, what they are doing, and possibly also what their intention is. And as I'll be showing you in a moment, when we look at the patent document to see what it does do, it also gives you a clue of actually who the bright minds behind an invention are. Exactly. The patent is a perfect communication system on technological progress in its own right. It's often seen just as a big element of just raking in money, but I have to say, while that definitely is an important function, actually to recoup R&D investments, its main function is to create knowledge, disseminate knowledge, and promote innovation across the area in which it is actually valid. And the patent doesn't last forever and a day. Its term is restricted to 20 years maximum from the day of first filing your patent application. Now, what does it mean? You can take your invention, write a patent, and drop that patent application in the inbox of your patent office. Let's take the German office or the UK. And from that from that day onwards, the clock starts ticking. And 20 years from, let's say today, at the latest, your patent is over. So it doesn't last forever and a day. You have to also pay for it to maintain it once it has been granted. Right. It doesn't automatically extend itself. So you have to do quite a lot as patent owner, take a lot of decisions what you want to do with it.
Yeah. And so that's an interesting point, I think, about patents, isn't it? That obviously I have developed or invented something which I think is unique, that I think there's some benefit for society, but also maybe benefit for myself if I can turn it into a product and sell it. but the patent is actually requiring me to share that invention, share that knowledge with other people in order to protect it at the same time. So that sort of brings me on to another question. What can we actually patent through Europe and what can't we? Because I've heard in the past, through especially in the US, there was a lot of discussion about whether I could patent, say, software algorithms.
There is actually almost, to put it at a very wide angle, the patent system is essentially non-discriminatory.
Okay.
It does not exclude a priori any technology from being patented unless there is a law that rules a patent for certain technologies out. So any technology is a priori accessible to patent protection. And that's not the EPO is saying that, that's actually a general international principle, because the patent system in Europe is not one that acts in its own right, in the sense that it's dissolved from anyone else. There is a very close cooperation from the EPO with a large number of national patent offices, first of all, of course, from the member states of our organization, but then also outside. Just want to mention the close cooperation we're having with the United States, with the Chinese office, with the Japanese and the Korean offices, but then also with the World Intellectual Property Organization in Geneva, which is a UN body governing a contract that basically allows a parallel patent application simultaneously in more than 160 countries worldwide. So there are a number of contracts and agreements, etc., in place that sort of regulate how a worldwide patent application scheme can functioning. The only thing that's actually missing is the grant of a world patent. We don't have a world patent and we don't have a world patent office, but there are international principles, legal principles, and also technical principles that ensure that we have more or less the same understanding of patent protection around the world.
Okay. So if I have an invention, what is the process? You said that once I want to make my patent application, I can sort of drop it by the German office, but what form does that take? Do I need a completely written patent document at that stage? And once I've submitted that documentation, how long can it then take before I'm granted a patent if I'm allowed to receive that patent?
Well, when you've made an invention, the recommendation is that you go and see, for instance, a patent attorney that helps you draft a patent application, because it's quite often the case that when an engineer thinks he's made an invention, the patent attorney will tell him, no, you haven't, because that has been invented before. But there is a detail in your invention that nobody's actually thought of before. And that is your invention, and not a big thing that you thought you had invented. So we strongly recommend to actually consult the services of a patent attorney, because filing a patent application is a strictly legal and formalistic process that is actually subject to the governing laws, for instance, the German national patent law or the European Patent Convention. And what you don't want to do is to miss out on any of the rules there, because if you do, you might lose your right to the patent, and that's not what we want. So go and talk to a patent attorney, and he will actually fill in the form, or rather online form, for a European patent application or national patent application. And these patent applications are looking all the same across the world, because that is harmonized. They start with a title page where they say everything about the who, what, when, and especially the date that the invention was received its initial stamp, because this is when the timestamp, this is when the clock starts ticking. And then you continue with a description of what you have invented. You have to set it out against the problem that you're trying to solve. And you have to explain to us what you have done, how you've gone about this, and what you say the result is. And in the end, your patent attorney will have to turn to this wonderful language that you mentioned at the beginning and formulate the legal, technical, very difficult to understand type of so-called patent claims. But that is what is essential. And this is what the patent office and perhaps later also a judge will look at to decide how far the patent goes, what does it cover, and actually what is really the subject of the invention. So once you have filed that with us, the patent comes to your patent application, comes to at the EPO to a so-called search division, who's carrying out, these are all specialists, carrying out a novelty search, finding out if your invention has already existed somewhere in the world. And they don't just look at patents, they look at everything. They consult databases, technology databases, patent literature, non-patent literature, whatever. Even from standardization organizations, we have documentation that we can actually check, has this already been disclosed anywhere? Because in order to be really a patentable invention, the first thing is it needs to be novel in an absolute sense, not having been described anywhere in the world before. And we also check, is it an invention in the sense, does it have an inventive activity? Meaning you don't just, you haven't just taken the handle off the door and mounted it the other way around. So there has to be some gist behind this, some clever idea. And then it has to be also disclosed in such a manner that a person skilled in the art is kind of an artificial person that doesn't really exist. Nobody's ever seen one, but we all understand what is meant by it. If you have an expert, he must be able to actually reversely engineer your invention and understand what it is and produce it and reproduce it. So you have to disclose what you have done.
Exactly.
And after a period of 18 months, your patent application, together with the report on whether it's novel or not and inventive or not, at first glance, will be published, meaning it appears on the website of the EPO or of any national patent office, and it can be inspected by anyone. But that also means that from that day onward, that you have a possibility to take legal action if somebody infringes that invention, and by filing an application for the same subject matter later, or using it without your priority, with your permission, etc.
Exactly. Yeah.
And that's important. We do that. It's the possibility to benefit from your invention, but at the same time also share it with the public. Anybody having an interest can inspect it.
So the topic of protecting a patent, I wanted to come on to later, but before we get to that stage where the patent claims have been checked and the patent has got to a stage where it can actually be issued, for somebody who is inventing, someone who's developing something, at what point during the development of their invention, when they start to realize there is something patentable there, at what point should they apply for the patent? I guess as soon as possible.
I mean, there is no one solution for all. It depends a bit on the technology that you're on the way. It depends on what you're doing. If you're let's say a startup and you have a very good idea, I think, and you have elaborated a bit, then maybe it's good to go there at a very early stage to speak to a patent attorney, because you're then in a very vulnerable position, and the patent attorney can help you with the most important thing, namely avoid that your invention is being leaked. If you've made an invention and you think you're on a good track, the first thing to do is not to talk about it, not to go to a trade fair to exhibit it, not to go to a science paper and write about it. But first, see your patent attorney. Otherwise, people might say, well, I've already heard about that, and you can't get your patent. And that's very, very sad. So if you are a young enterprise trying to sort of take a foot in the market, getting money through a patent is probably the only way of developing. And so it's very advisable to consult with a patent attorney at a very early stage. If you're a large pharmaceutical company, you won't have that problem at all, because you have a large patent department behind you who will actually formulate the research and also the IP strategy that you need to apply. So, but the general principle that is valid for all is do not divulge before you file. It's the other way around. First file, then talk about it.
Exactly. So
that's the most important thing.
So you mentioned there as well startups, and obviously startups can be very varied in their nature. Some are bootstrapped with personal finance, and as soon as the word attorney is mentioned, you can almost feel your wallet being emptied. So is there a chance for somebody to apply for a patent without getting support from attorney, or is that really the only sensible way in order to go through the process?
It's the preferable way. Let's put it like that. I wouldn't want to speculate now to what extent you can first drop an insufficiently defined patent application into a letterbox in order to get the priority stamp and then go and see your patent attorney. I would always recommend to do it the other way around. But it is important that you do it because we have solid evidence from studies that our chief economist unit has done, that for a startup, filing a patent application, especially European application, is a safe way forward for growing and creating economic value for themselves and also for others. Because an idea, to have an idea is great. To formulate it out with the help of a patent attorney is probably even better. There is no, even if there is no legal, let's say, you're not forced to do this as long as you, let's say, if you're a German company domiciled in Germany and want to file with the European Patent Office. But if you come from the US, then you have to have representation before the EPO. But we always tell people, don't go any risks. Go and find yourself somebody who can represent you. Yeah.
Now, I've got lots of questions to cover, but time is flying by. So coming sort of towards that point where we're thinking about making the application for a patent and the financial costs involved of even starting this process. If I don't have the financial resources to fight an infringement of my patent, if I were to receive it, does it make sense to apply for a patent at all? Should I have that in mind before I even start the process?
Absolutely. I mean, it's the patent will help you building a bridge to investors who can help you in that. It might even help you to find a larger company who has an interest in producing your invention. So you can actually give out a license, you can share the risks, you can minimize your own risks. Sharing or giving out licenses or even selling the patent, if it comes to that, might be a good way forward. So there's lots of things you can do. A patent puts your invention into a tradable format. Yeah. And then you can do with it whatever is most suited, best suited for your own business strategy. But the thing is, you need to have one. If you don't have a strategy and you don't know what you want to do with it, then a patent is just an investment. So it's always good to think of what you want to do with it. And if you're a small company, having an investor or finding someone who is a producer for your invention or actually help you to bring it to market is probably a very good way forward. Also from the point of view of mitigating risks.
So one last question then before we move on to Solaris Floats, who applied for a patent recently in the last couple of years. Does the EPO, the European Patent Office, offer any training or anything similar on applying for patents and the process?
We do. We have a unit called the European Patent Academy. They do have a lot of courses where you can actually go and see what, learn about patenting, what it is, what it's doing. And there are also some e-learning courses that are quite helpful in that respect. Yes, but there is possibilities to get information on how to get a patent, what to do with it, and how to go about it.
Super. Well, thanks very much, Rainer, for those insights. I think that's brought us all a long way forward on the basics of patents and the application process and what the EPO's involvement in that process is. Stay with us. I'm just going to bring in Nuno and Carla now, and we'll find out a little bit more about their patent application experience. So there we go. Nuno and Carla, hi, welcome back.
Hello again.
So Nuno, perhaps you could start by explaining a little bit about Solaris Float. What is the Solaris Float? What have you been doing, and what sort of technology have you been patenting?
Solaris is a Portuguese company that was created based on this idea. It's a company that's part of another company, was resulting of an investment that was done in these technologies. The idea behind Solaris is the development that we did. It was the Solaris had generated some of these ideas, and then we created the technology behind it. So the way to understand it a little bit better is to understand what was done. And so what did we do? I think this resonates perhaps with a lot of the viewership here. So it's a lot of engineering work, really. So in reality, the solution that we were trying to find is to help to create photovoltaic systems that were more efficient, because we were able to create a tracking system that followed the sun in 2 axes. Okay. So the originality here is that these systems are on the water. So if you can imagine a large 36-meter diameter structure with solar panels on it, the structure rotates in the water, following the sun, and there's another set of systems that elevates the panels also. So you can create a system that tracks the sun in 2 axes, the rotation and elevation of the sun. And so the original idea was created by the team at Solaris, and the implementation of that idea. So having something like this in the water is something that we want to do, basically. And the implementation of that idea was left to the team at Inegi. And so what we did was convert an idea, which is not a patent, right? Which is not a technology. And we created the technology that's implemented that with a number of years of work, and I think dozens of people at a certain point. It sounds strange that you need so many people working on some of these technologies to make them work, even if they are not necessarily so high tech as you were commenting earlier on. It doesn't seem like a very high tech thing. So these are plastic structures that are injection molded. They have some flotation devices that are put in them, because we can pile them boxes that are put on top of each other so that they can be transported. And the system is modular, so we repeat the same building blocks. It's modular there's a limited number of parts that we repeat. Mm-hmm. And the system can also be used with 2-axis tracking or a single-axis tracking, and all that. So the company itself was, let's say, a company that was the investment vector for this. It was created to invest in this technology. It's owned by another company. The principal promoters were people very much invested in the idea of the technology itself. And our role was to create the technology itself and make it work and test it and implement it and work with other companies also to make sure that it worked. This takes a long time. It involves some people, involves some investment, and I think the idea, the trainer just said that patents make your inventions tradable, makes a lot of sense for me now.
Okay.
So if you're listening to this, if you're an engineer, you've worked in engineering all your life, and you know that your technical contribution is pretty cool and interesting, but you also realize that some of these things need a lot of money. And having patents is the way to ensure that money circulates to this idea. Initially to pay for the engineering work, later on to pay for investments in tooling and demonstrations. So have I answered your question? Maybe I've talked.
Yes, absolutely. No, I think that's important. And one of the things I wanted to do just at this point was introduce a video of the Solaris float solution, the photovoltaic flashing tracking solution based on, it's floating on water, obviously. So we'll just cut across that video and show everybody what has resulted from all of your efforts.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that really sums up nicely what you've actually created and what you've implemented. Carla, one of the things I wanted to pose to you was at what point in your involvement in the project did the discussion of an invention get discussed, and the thought that that might be something that you could patent?
So this project, this is a very important project for me because I'm involved in all topics, and the main discussion is the simple solution, and this is a big. It's difficult for the patent because normally the simpler solution it's very difficult to put in patents. So this is main discussion, but because in real practice or in I'm sorry, but in execution or in put in practical exercise, you need an easy solution because it's important all people understand the symbol of this platform. So it's it's a different. So in practice, you have an easy solution, and in patent, the complex solution, it's more easy to inside and protect. So
Exactly, yeah. I think that's one of the challenges, isn't it? Very simple ideas. Lots of
Yes.
people have simple ideas, and
Yes.
I mean, when I initially came across your solution, I was sort of surprised that anything could be patented there at all as an external person. You think, well, I see solar cells along the motorway here in Germany when I'm driving all the time. It's not exactly a massive jump of imagination to maybe floating on a lake. So
Yes.
I fully understand.
I remember a discussion with the clients. One point for them is to assemble this platform with one tool, just one tool. It's difficult to develop a simple solution for this objective.
Yeah, I would say that there's two levels of this. It's the original idea of how, okay, the jump, it doesn't seem too complex, is, okay, but I want to rotate this in the water. How does that work? Is this a patent? Yes, so no one had done that before. It seems like a very simple thing, but no one had done that before. But then the implementation of this, it's not just one patent. There's one patent, which is a rotating system.
Yes.
But there's a number of other things around it that are related to the modularity, to the simplicity, to the elevation in the other axis. So there's a number of other things that are other patents that form a family of IP that was developed within the project, and that makes it what it is.
Yeah.
So, Nuno, how did the patent application process look like? Did you know how to do it? Had you done it before, or did you have to go out and find out how to do that?
Well, the person that, we have done that before, and Carlo had done a few of these things before. We had other projects also where we've done some of these things. There are patent applications that are very simple and straightforward. They're not real patents, they're just provisory patents, where you say, this is what I'm going to do, And so I have priority over this. This is not really the final thing, and I'm going to work on preparing a patent for you, but I need to go out and do other things. So just to let you know, this is what I'm working on. So those things are quite straightforward, and we have done a few of those before. They're quite useful. We also have used them before to enable some of these things. In this case, the advice that Rainer was giving, and without too many details, of involving patent lawyers is a very good advice. There are some stories about that, but in essence, we see a lot of their support as creating value to establishing the family of patents, to creating a process where the patent is approved without too many complications. We've observed that you can actually write a patent, you can submit it, you can do that, but if you do it through a patent lawyer, I think that makes sense. And in our experience, it's not been a very expensive thing. So the review process that they do, the discussions they have with us, it's not a very difficult thing. It's not something very complicated, and it's not very expensive.
So, Carla, how long does the patent application process take for you between submitting the initial paperwork through the patent lawyer to actually getting a response from the EPO?
So I don't know how long time, because this is a bigger process and we need a lot of time. But in this process, I don't know, but 1 year passed to start to develop in this project. We start to put the first patents or preliminary patents for to understand the potential of protection our ideas.
Yeah, I think we had something like, if I can complement a little bit, I think we had something like a year of this priority patent. Then there's like 1.5 to 2 years of actually being published. It depends on what comes back and what you have to reply to.
Yes.
and stuff like that.
Yes.
Okay.
And in our case, we try to find another places, not Europe, but the other, China, United States, and normally this process is very hard.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
There's lots of questions.
So were there any other surprises in the application process? We've talked about the challenges of patenting something that's simple, and then the complexities of taking a patent beyond Europe. Is there anything else that you learnt?
Depends. In other case, I don't know. We submit in this project 5 patents. And some patents, the question is very easy, and the other, it's hard questions. So depends the people to realize the exam this work.
Yeah, I think one surprise, what a surprise, but realization is sometimes the cost. Not in the beginning, but when things start going. When things start going, I think there's a substantial amount of money that goes into this. So, which is something we all know, right? But in 5 patents, it was in the tens of thousands of euros every year that we needed to spend to keep this going. But it's so you really you're making your invention tradable, as we were saying earlier, but you need to trade it. You need to actually move it along.
Exactly.
It needs to be fueled.
It's got to be turned into a business, into a financial
working
business at some point.
Works. Sorry.
I was going to say, when you're you said that Solaris Floats belongs to a larger organisation. I don't know whether there was any other additional financing or sort of other support money that was required. But did having patent applications in process help to smooth things and move things along faster?
Certainly, I think there's certainly the parent company, or the largest owner of Solaris, is now another company in Portugal, JP Sacote. Solaris used to be owned by this company and another person who was one of the first promoters of the idea, one of the engine behind the getting this going in the beginning, and certainly that was a crucial person in the everything, and certainly for him, I think it was a crucial thing to have the patents going. And then we had there's another company that's working also in a very close partnership, Simolj Plastics, who's also Simolj Group, who's also very much invested in this. I don't think these are JP and Simolj are large companies. Simolj is a really large plastics manufacturer for the automotive industry and all that. So having the patents puts this in a level of availability and industrial capabilities that I don't think would be possible otherwise, to be honest. So in what I'm trying to say is an idea is a really interesting thing. A contribution to society, and getting from the idea to the contribution to technology that makes a difference requires moving all of these big chess pieces. Yeah. And patents are, to be honest, they're really interesting instruments for that. And I don't work for the European Patent Office, so there's nothing there. I'm just an engineer. So it seems to be a really good idea.
Super. So for our live viewers who are participating and looking at us discussing this interesting topic of patents and how to apply for them, don't forget you can join us at any time by submitting questions. We've got the forum here to do it, and we've got the people to answer those questions. I've lost Rainer at the minute, unfortunately, so it's going to be a bit difficult to pull him back into the conversation. But one of the, Carla, one of the things I noticed there was obviously you working with some inflatable bags and the containers, as it were, for the photovoltaic modules in the laboratory, and then also outside at a lake. Is your technology visible for people to go and look at currently? Is it in place and being used?
At the moment, exists two places. I don't know, it's easy to visit, but exists in Hull in Netherlands.
Okay.
And one in Sabic, it's a company, it's a partner company, and the other in Osterwalder. It's a pilot project to understand the behavior this structure in the aggressive environment.
Okay. And
they're both in Holland at the moment. Yeah.
Both in Holland. And so are you at a point where you see this actually rolling out more broadly, or is this part of the plan at the minute to test this technology from a robustness point of view? But I also noticed you're looking at the impact these floating photovoltaic systems can have on the lakes where they're installed as well.
Yes, it's important in this type of projects to test in real places, and the lakes, it's very important because the impact of these structures in lake, it's very important because probably we have I don't know in English, I'm sorry, but the involvement, I don't know, no. Sorry, but
the impact
environment around
yes, it's important. It's good because you stop the water out in this lake, so it's an important impact. And the organisms, it's important too, because the water it's don't contaminate it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So the original idea of the patents are on the thing that rotates and all the modules and stuff. But one of the things that we were really interested in is there are side effects of having photovoltaics on the water, and we wanted to understand what these were. And so some of them are a hot topic in people doing these systems on the water. The saving water in reservoirs is an important aspect, and this prevents evaporation from happening in a couple of different ways. It prevents wind from actually getting to the top surface, so it prevents convective loss of water, and it also reduces the radiation on the surface. So in combination, it can reduce something around 60% the evaporation of water from a reservoir. The lack of radiation, the reduced radiation reduces also the appearance of plants that normally form on the top of reservoirs, and they have an impact on reducing the amount of oxygen for the organisms that are below. So there's a number of things that we were really interested in. We were interested also in the effect of water on the cooling of the panels, because there's an effect on increased production of energy. None of this is in the patents, but the technology is a little bit broader than that. And there's really interesting side effects that I think are very interesting. They're very complementary to the whole energy transition, environmental awareness of this. So there's a few things that we can do that have very good side effects.
That's great to hear, because I think that's the whole point, isn't it? We're patenting here technology, and it may be something quite small or simple, but obviously that has a big impact if you're able to then protect yourself as you bring it to market and establish yourselves to achieve, like you say, sort of improvements in our environment, improvements in energy generation, and the impact on the environment, which is great to hear. So thanks very much, Rainer. We've managed to get you back in. I thought we'd lost you for a moment. Since we're all here together, I wanted to take a few questions, additional questions I had, and put them to the group. One of the things I wanted to maybe pose to Rainer as well was, we heard from Carla about obviously the complexity of patenting a very simple idea, because lots of the simple ideas already exist. What's the sort of difference, do you think, between applying for a patent for an invention compared to maybe just registering a design or having a copyright on a design? Because in the case of Solaris Float, if we look at what they're building, I mean, you could register the design maybe of those floating objects. Isn't that protection enough in some cases?
No, I mean, you need all three of them. You know, we usually say an invention has a technology that makes it work. It has quite often a name, so that you can trademark, and it has a look and feel sometimes, and that is a registered design. So, but if you only have the design or the trademark, then you cannot protect the technology. A patent legally protects the technical effect that your invention actually produces. And that's and the difference between the other two is that in a patent system, you have to explain it. You have to convince, you have to show what the technology is doing. It's not a registration process, but it's a examination process. You have patent experts, meaning engineers skilled in the art, who will look at your invention, who will actually check it against the already existing background to see what is really the gist there, what is really new. Mm-hmm. And then they check in a second step if all what they have found and what Nuno and Carla have been claiming is actually compatible with the applicable law. And only after these checks have been done, you get the patent.
Now, one of the reasons we have Solaris Floats representing a patent applicant on the show today is because they were part of the European Inventor Award. Yes. Nuno, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about how you found out about that and got involved, and what the value has been to you as a team.
We're laughing, and Rainer knows why I'm laughing. We found out because we received an email.
Wow. Okay.
You've been nominated, and I shared the email with Carol and the rest of the colleagues, and we were all, I think the word is dumbfounded. You're not expecting this. I think Rainer was pointing out that the team at EPO, these 6,000 people, are a lot of engineers and scientists, and that's who they are. They are engineers. They're engineers. So they look through these things. Some of them they find really interesting, and they nominate them. You can also nominate other people, which was not our case, I guess. So no one nominated. We did not do that. So we just received this email, and that was an interesting process. First, we wanted to find out if this was true, and it was.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It's not a smooth, right?
No spam. And we had this meeting with, I might be exaggerating, but it was like 20 people from the communications department and the EPO.
Wow.
It wasn't, but it was a lot of people from the communications department, making sure that we understood what was happening and relaxing us a little bit, but also stressing us out a little bit regarding what was going to happen. But certainly,
it does tend to get all your marketing team organized and focused. These sort of things.
It's strange because we are not these people, right? Engineers are not super
not.
at all. So this is
it's very difficult for us.
It was completely strange.
We'll come up with 19 only next time. Yeah.
No, but I have to say, I think I also have to say that we were taken care of with such care, with such attention. I think the acknowledgement that we are not these type of people, that we need to be explained, people need to explain to us what was going to happen. And we went through the process of talking to many of the colleagues, of having a day that we prepared the session that went online so that everyone was expecting this, and no one was in a panic. We also had wonderful people who were always with us. This is true. So what I'm saying, I guess when you're handling geeks, which is perhaps what you're trying to do,
yeah,
you have to be slightly. But we felt really welcome, and so that took a little bit the weight of the stress of the situation out of it, because it was really a completely different situation. So it became something a little bit more relevant. It became, at least today, to me, it's a recognition of the work that's being done, and I think putting an emphasis on some of the technical work that's being done all around the world, really, on these topics, and it was a really interesting thing to have been. It was a fascinating thing to have been part of, and I think I understand the goal of it.
Yeah,
it's very good.
So Rainer, with that in mind, Nuno saying that he understands the goal. I mean, what is the goal of the EPO with the European Inventor Award? Why do you think we need this, and why is it important?
Simply to raise awareness of the importance of being innovative. We cannot solve any of the problems of our time without technological and social innovation. And technical innovation quite often is key to advancing social development. Fighting poverty, fighting famine, fighting climate change. You can't do this without technology. And quite often you need politics to set the framework, saying, this is what we want to achieve. Now, engineers, go about it.
Yeah.
You see that with the combustion engine, the discussion about the combustion engine, the Green Deal that we have in Europe. That is one of the big incentives for companies to innovate. And instead of talking about complex or sometimes even not so complex technology, let's talk about the bright minds behind that.
Yeah.
Exactly. Why on earth does somebody invent a wind park or a mooring system like you do? So actually giving a human face to technology, showing that there is emotion, that there's real life people behind it. That is the incentive, the communication objective of this prize. And also give recognition to the great inventors that we have. They're not just in the US, they're not just Japanese, Korean, or Chinese. Europe has a huge pool of talent. Exactly, and this is what we need to tap.
This is really important as well, isn't it? Because if you watch the news as a non-engineer, let's say, as someone not involved in the business, you do get the feeling that especially North America seems to do a very good job of marketing their talent. There's names of people who are technical, of engineers, who we can just release from our lips. and yet it's very difficult to name somebody in Europe of that caliber as well. So no, I really commend it, and it's great to have that. I'm just going to have a look at the questions. Now, we do have a question that's just come in, and the question is maybe if we could nail down this in a little bit more detail, because I think we sort of skirted around it. What sort of amount of money do you think we have to have ready in order to make a patent application? What sort of, how many thousands are we talking about?
I can speak for the fees. The fees to get a European patent from start to finish is around 4.5 to 5,500 euros, depending on how the process goes.
That's not
But
bad,
it's
is
just
it really?
office fees. Huh? I can't talk about attorney fees. It's probably more Carla's and Nuno's experience.
Yeah.
The attorney fees aren't very significant, but then you have, if you want to maintain these patents in other regions of the world, it's easy to get, I don't know, 15, 20,000 euros per patent if you get everything and everything else. The attorney fees, I have the example in Portugal, but I don't think we ever went very much above 2,000 euros a patent, something like that. So it's not; these are not fortunes at all.
Yeah.
But then if you add up 5 patents and you start seeing the money going out,
then it gets a bit painful.
painful. Yes. Yeah. But then on the other side, you see the investments coming in, and you know that behind that there's the patents giving the companies and the investors the tranquility to do that.
Super. Well, I think that's about all we have time for today. I think we've covered every corner of patents, and for me, it's been really interesting to also take another look at patents. I think they're often positioned as something unfair and unjust, and yet I think you make a very good point that these are actually part of supporting businesses and allowing businesses to thrive, because obviously without the financial investment and some sort of guarantee for return, it's going to be very difficult to bring those businesses forward, isn't it? So I guess that's also what you're seeing, Carla and Nuno, as well with Solaris floats.
Yes, that's exactly.
Maybe I could say something, but for some odd reason I didn't manage to show that slide, but there is importance of industries making above average use of intellectual property rights, among them also patents. So these industries that are actually intensively using patents, trademarks, design rights, etc., they contribute about 45% of the EU GDP.
Wow.
And they are about 40% of the jobs in the EU.
Yeah.
And they have about 80% of the EU, make out about 80% of the imports to the EU and 82% of the exports. So they're absolutely essential for the European economy.
Yeah.
So it's not just about raking in a lot of money or pushing others out of the market. It's the whole system that gets a technology market going in Europe, and that's what patents are about. It's making technology market a market for the EU, for Europe work. That's the point of patents in Europe.
Yeah. Super. Well, on that note, thank you very much to all of you, to Rainer, Carla and Nuno. I'm just going to take you out of the live stream now so as I can round up for our audience what we've learned today. So, see you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
The show.
Thank you very much.
So, patents are considered an essential part of the tech businesses, providing protection for inventive ideas that take time to bring to market or require significant investment. If you think your ideas are inventive enough to warrant a patent, I hope that today's show has provided you with some good guidance and advice on what to do next. My thanks also go to today's experts, Rainer Osterwalder from the European Patent Office and Carla Gomez and Nuno Correa from Solaris Float. Thank you so much for your time and all your answers. You've delivered some brilliant insights for us today. So that wraps it up. Please like, subscribe to Elektor TV on YouTube and share our videos on whatever platforms you use. Or drop by the website at elektormagazine.com/Elektor Engineering Insights and you'll see the topics for our future shows. If you'd like to join me as a guest, write me an email, drop me a tweet, or reach out to me, Stuart Cording, on LinkedIn. Thanks for joining, stay in touch, and don't forget to keep asking your engineering questions.